The FIA has a new impact data recorder, and karters are speculating the end of pushback bumpers. Let's get into it. Utilized for the first time in the 2025 Karting Academy Trophy in Portugal, the FIA is utilizing a new impact data recorder. This recorder is being used to record, among other things, G-force. The FIA says that it's being implemented to help gain knowledge in the nature and frequency of crashes, as well as inform the future safety systems. Karters have immediately jumped on the idea that it's going to replace pushback bumpers. So the question is, will it? Pushback bumpers are essentially just an impact switch. It is a mechanical system whereas a certain amount of force will cause it to push back in between the bumpers. The problem that we officials and competitors have with them is that they are indiscriminate. They don't know the difference between, say, a crash or bottoming out in the dirt versus an impact that is actually illegal. On top of that, manufacturers have been designing their front fairings to actually defeat the pushback system. Because of these problems, CKNA doesn't use them at all. The Toronto Racing Association of Karters out of Goodwood, Ontario here, we have completely eliminated the mandatory penalty in all 4-cycle classes. Kart Stars Canada has eliminated the mandatory penalty for Junior Light and Cadet. And don't be surprised if you see other series following the same route. But is there a better way on the horizon? Are these impact sensors going to replace pushback bumpers? To replace pushback bumpers, the data recorders are going to have to do 3 things. The data is going to have to be accessible to race control in a timely manner. It's going to have to discriminate between illegal and legal impacts. And the data is going to have to be reliable at an inexpensive cost. Now, the data itself is going to have to not just record the magnitude of the impact, but the direction of it. Remember that a pushback bumper is designed to record front to rear impact, so that's the kind of impact that we would be interested in accessing. But of course, it isn't just a straight on impact. They're going to be on slightly different angles because, karts aren't exactly perfectly lined up as you head into braking zones where these kinds of impacts are happening. But assuming that it has all that, how's that data getting to race control? The FIA specifically says that these recorders are small and inexpensive, specifically used for karting, as compared to other commercial units used in other series. That means that they are going to have a very simple system. They're not going to be able to send data. Or if they can, it's not going to be any great deal of data and it's not going to be over a great distance. Now, certainly you could create a live update system, much like bigger series use, but it's going to be expensive and larger and harder to fit on a go-kart. And simply modifying the transponder system isn't going to work because a transponder just clicks off a small bit of data that is connected to a database in a computer. Whereas here we're talking about the data being stored inside the device and it having to be transmitted to another system. Pushback bumpers, when not called on the track, are called in the scale line. You have an individual walking up and down there. So an individual with, say, some kind of wand where they can upload the information directly from the kart would certainly be a system that would work. All that data could be collected and sent up to race control. If it has to be plugged into, now you're slowing things down, adding complexity, and also adding a failure point. I mean, cables can break, the actual plug-in system itself can be a problem, and you certainly don't want to be collecting them off the go-karts themselves. If an actual, storage device has to be removed from them, now you're talking about the kind of time that we just don't have between races. But if we can get the data that we're looking for up to race control, now it has to be analyzed. And this is where discrimination between the type of impacts matters the most. If you're just going to use a red line of impact and the system isn't able to discriminate, say, direction, or even if it has direction, what caused the impact, then you have a system that is absolutely no different than a pushback system. A good solution to that would be to make front-mounted cameras mandatory in all classes. But now, of course, competitors either have to buy and operate these cameras at all times, or the series has to buy the cameras, get them mounted, ensure that they function, and all of the responsibility is on the series for this scenario. And then, of course, if the footage isn't there, is it just an automatic penalty at that point? There's a lot of complexity and decisions that need to be made in line based on failure points. The downfall of pushback bumpers is because the homologation process didn't actually test the bumpers properly. They use a flat wall as opposed to using a mock rear bumper. So what manufacturers did was design their front fairings to redirect as much force as possible down, while at the same time using very soft materials that act essentially like a helmet does on your head. It's going to absorb enough of the impact that an impact that should have activated the switch won't. Switching to an electronic sensor doesn't change anything. All of the impact is still going through the front fairing in these impacts that we're trying to measure. As long as the front fairing can protect a pushback bumper, it's going to protect an impact sensor in exactly the same way. Say that we get all of that stuff worked out. Now the question becomes, who owns the actual device? I think it's a pretty obvious answer that the series needs to own and control these devices. Not just because people will tamper with things, because competitors absolutely will tamper with them if they get the opportunity, but because the series then gets to own the data. Copyright matters. So if the series is going to own them, I just worked a race this weekend that had almost 330 competitors in it, and I'll be working one this next weekend coming up as of recording this that is probably going to have similar, if not greater numbers. This is a lot of data recorders that you need to have, plus backups you need to have, plus you need a system that's going to be able to read them and store the data. These are not inexpensive systems. Now they're going to start at the top with the FIA, with their idea being to work down through the ASNs. But at that point, you're talking about years and years down the road. This is a development process. In the end, we have to read what the FIA is actually saying these things are going to be used for. The FIA safety director, Nuno Costa, has been saying, the data has the potential to improve safety standards across the board. Think like the FIA thinks. They're going to be considering not just how the bodywork and the chassis reacts in crashes, but they're thinking about bigger things like design and layout of race courses, where barriers are put, the types of barriers that are in place. If a particular corner has a large frequency of crashes and the G-force in those crashes is particularly high, they can start figuring out ways of mitigating those risks. Is the corner itself the problem? Is the barrier design or placement the problem? These are the kinds of things that they're thinking of. Safety matters to the FIA, which is why they're always working on new ways of trying to improve safety in karting. And this is no different than those other systems in the past. Now, what would be nice to see is the FIA looking at the data from pushback incidents, where they can maybe come up with a database showing what activations actually look like through the chassis. Having actual data versus, an on-off switch like a pushback bumper could lead to improvements in the pushback bumper design, and maybe they will fix their homologation issues in the way that they test front fairings. But as for replacing pushbacks altogether in the near future, I think that's wishful thinking. These systems are brand new, and the data that they're going to get is going to take time to analyze. Solutions are going to take time to come up with. The quickest and most obvious way to improve pushback bumpers is to fix the way that they're homologated. Fix that testing system. But even if they fix that tomorrow, it's going to take time for those new updated bumpers to filter through the system. They're not going to force every single series all the way down through the ASNs and the clubs to start replacing bumpers all at once. It's going to take a few years. So sorry everybody, at least for now, FIA series are stuck with pushbacks. So what do you think of this new impact sensor? Is this going to improve karting in a very realistic and tangible way? Is it just another gimmick? Do you think it will actually replace pushbacks in the near future? Let me know down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. And as always, I will see you at the racetrack.